Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and today we're going to be talking about specifically the recession and how we're currently in a recession and how Biden is being ignorant of it, as he always is. This will probably be a very more shorter video because there's not too much to really say much about it besides being with the short article and everything. But I kind of want to let people know that we are in a recession and he's being ignorant of it. And I hope everybody's able to put food on their table as well, by the way. Doesn't sound like a recession to me. Joe Biden downplays economic woes as the U.S. enters recession. President Joe Biden suggested that the U.S. economy was not in a recession Thursday, despite new economic data showing that the U.S. has entered a recession. Biden spoke at the White House, touting economic data showing a growing labor market and some new investments. Biden also advocated for the passage of the CHIPS Act and Inflation Reduction Act in Congress, claiming that both would boost economic growth. That doesn't sound like a recession to me, Biden said, wrapping up his comments and leaving the podium without taking questions.
And just last week, as it had SK Corporation of the Republic of Korea announced $22 billion in new investment in semiconductor batteries, chargers, and medical devices, creating another 16,000 jobs here in America. And this is powering the strongest rebound in American manufacturing in over 3 decades, creating 613,000 manufacturing jobs. Passing the CHIPS bill is going to put another $72 billion for incentives and tax credits to expand semiconductor production. And the Inflation Reduction Act will add another $370 billion in clean energy tax credits in reconciliation, including incentives to accelerate domestic production of solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, and critical materials processing. That doesn't sound like a recession to me. Thank you very much.
Great. So, when you talk about the clean energy, does he not understand that the batteries and wind turbines are completely unreliable? Or are we completely forgetting on how the fact the turbine specifically blew up back in, I may believe, in Texas? It could be in Texas. That was caused an issue. Not only that, the amount of birds that they kill and all this other stuff and how expensive it is. It's around like something $9.2 million or something along those lines for one wind turbine, and they don't produce enough energy to for enough electricity for enough people. So yeah, that money would be completely useless and doesn't avoid the fact that we're still in a recession. On Thursday morning, the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis released a data showing that the U.S. economy shrank for the second straight quarter, satisfying the traditional requirement of a recession. Recently, the White House has argued that 2 straight quarters of failing GDP does not necessarily define a recession, that the only Bureau of Economic Analysis can declare an official recession. Biden's remarks at the White House follow a statement saying that the U.S. economy is on the right path, which is not, that he released earlier that the release of the GDP report. The Federal Reserve and the Biden administration have struggled for months to tame runaway inflation that accelerated to 9.1% in June. Coming off last year's historic economic growth and regaining all of the private sector jobs lost during the pandemic crisis, it's no surprise that the economy is slowing down as the Federal Reserve acts to bring down inflation, Biden said in this statement. But even if we face historic global challenges, we are on the right path and we will come through this transition stronger and more secure. He added, our job market remains historically strong with unemployment at 3.66 and more than 1 million jobs created in the second quarter alone. Consumer spending is continuing to grow. Earlier this week, I met with the chairman of the SK Group from Korea, just one of the companies investing more than $200 billion in American manufacturing since they took office, powering a historic recovery of American manufacturing. Well, let's see what these guys released and kind of see what happened. The U.S. in a recession after the second straight growth of negative growth. The United States is in a recession after the economy shrank for a second quarter by an annualized rate of 0.9%. On Thursday, the Bureau of Economic Analysis first estimate of the nation's gross domestic product was worse than predicted expansion of 0.5%. The next streak we noted. Economists widely define a recession as 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. The decrease in real GDP reflected decreases in private inventory, investment, residential investment, federal spending, and state and local government spending and non-residential fixed investment that were partly offset by increased exports and personal consumption. Expenditures PCE, the BEA explained. Imports, which are a subtraction in the calculation of GDP, increased. White House economic advisor Brian Deese has claimed that a recession is not universally defined as 2 straight quarters of negative growth. It's not the definition that economists have traditionally relied on. Deese recently said regarding the aforementioned definition. In 2008, Deese told the media economists have a technical definition of recession, which is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. On Sunday, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen also denied that the U.S. was heading toward a recession and instead claimed that the economy was in a transition with growth that is slowing. This is not an economy that is in recession, she told the NBC News' Chuck Todd. But we're in a period of transition in which growth is slowing and just necessary and appropriate. We need to be growing at a steady and sustainable pace. So there's a slowdown in businesses can see that, and that's appropriate, given that people now have jobs and we have a strong labor market. E.J. Tony, a research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, also told the Daily Wire in an email that despite the Biden administration's attempt to change the definition of recession, the U.S. is in one for several reasons. Over the last 18 months, Congress, President Biden, and the Federal Reserve set our nation up for disaster. The consequence is that we are now in a recession, and Tony said. The current economic situation is the consequence of profligate federal spending financed by the printed money. Now, instead of acknowledging responsibility for their failed policies, the Biden administration chooses to play war games, just like they did with inflation, he added. The latest of verbal gymnastics, an attempt to redefine a recession and deny the reality of the current moment. It adds insult to injury for hundreds of American families when the Biden administration engages in this Orwellian doublespeak. Make no mistake, while Biden officials debate the meaning of recession, working and middle-class Americans have been living in one for months. Regardless of the alleged war games, Tony noted that Americans feel the economic woes under the administration. Unlike the bureaucrats here in Washington, those American families have been feeling the economic pain and were well aware of the reality of this recession long before today's numbers were released, Tony remarked. By denying it's even happening, the administration is demonstrating just how out of touch they are. Or they don't really care about American people. Well, they've shown what they wanted to do. We go to the economy here, that all this stuff here that these are denial and stuff, and it's a huge problem. We're seeing a lot of issues here to where the economy is doing very bad, and all this stuff, it doesn't seem to be doing good. Even we have here, the U.S. economy contracted and analyzed 0.9% in the second quarter, and this reading came in much worse than the market expectation for an expansion of 0.5%. So we have again these huge problems with the economy and how we're actually in a recession. And the Biden administration wants to lie to the American people and try to save face and say that they're not the actual problem when they are the problem. So at the end of the day, guys, we see a lot more issues coming up forth, and you get what you voted for. I mean, people won't want to take blame, but they have to take blame for the things, the people that they voted in for. And now we have a lunatic, a man that wants to lie to the American people, doesn't care about the American people and their lives because because he wants to allow a terrorist guy that wanted to actively kill Americans in exchange for a person that plays basketball that honestly is not a very good person, in my personal opinion. But I digress. Well, guys, we're in a recession, and of course the White House, aka Biden, wants to ignore it. Shows really care for the American people. Alright, guys, that's it for the video. Like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.